Boom. Okay. Perfect. And so pause recording there. Okay, perfect. So welcome everyone. We just saw a video connecting from TED Education, connecting what we were talking about last week regarding memories and the structural and functional connectivities of our brain, and how that enhances not only our cognitive capacity, but also how music playing can generalize to other aspects of our life, like social cognition or at work or at school. And so that was just a precursor to what we're going to be talking about this week, which is executive functions, goal setting, and problem solving. Right. And before we get started, I'll start with the disclaimer that the opinions voiced in this workshop are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect those of Providence St. Jude Medical Center. The content provided in this workshop is for informational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. Please consult with a healthcare provider or for advice regarding any medical treatment or condition. And confidentiality, while not mandated, any and all information would be greatly appreciated if we keep information about attendees shared confidential and within this virtual room. If any information shared that makes anyone reasonably suspicious that abuse of a child, elder, or dependent adult is occurring, I must break confidentiality in the circumstances. And so, Zoom etiquette, please remember to mute your microphone when you're not speaking to reduce the background noise. Otherwise, myself or one of my co-hosts will mute you. And so that's just an effort to reduce the background noise. If you'd like to speak or ask a question, please use a hand raise function at the bottom of your screen. Also, I will periodically ask for questions. And so, as a reminder, these meetings are being recorded, as will each of the 12 morning sessions in this workshop series. There is an afternoon session that is longer than 1 hour that will not be recorded to facilitate discussions amongst ourselves. The recording will only record the screen that's being shared, and your voice will only be recorded if you ask a question. Therefore, if you would not like your voice to be recorded, please use the chat function at the bottom of your screen to ask and chat with other attendees. So the recording will include only presenter mode and will be available as soon as possible via email and our YouTube channel. So excellent. Perfect. So as we check in, right? So recall, how was your week, right? So as now we should be having over a month of just using these things religiously, right? We're home for your stuff, right? The keyring by your door, the automatic places, right? The decorative bowl by your bedstand, so that way you always have your wallet or your cell phone. 3 is your calendar, right? You should be tracking your calendar, your appointments. You should be having this class, for example, on your Mondays, either Monday mornings or Monday afternoons. And then strategy 4 is your notebook, right? Or your journal, right? Where you're tracking your sleep, you're tracking your goals, right? You're breaking it down so that way your 3 month goal is more manageable and a monthly goal, right? And so at this point, these 4 core strategies, you should be implementing them so that way that helps your brain with connecting where things are to the place, right? And then place helps you that the method of loci, right? So the connecting place to the information to these different locations and then creating a story. So this way you are making more connections for your brain, right? To help enhance your memories, right? And this way, if you make more connections, not only is it enhancing your memories, you're also enhancing your organization, right? And so in this sense, the journals should all connect with each other. So for homework for last week into this week, is to continue planning your full week in the calendar, right? Breaking down your journal, your goal into your journal, and then the 3 month goal should be either a 3 month goal or a monthly goal or a weekly goal if that's easier for you to conceptualize. And then third is to journal about your brain injury event, right? Maybe there are still some aspects that are affecting you, right? And in that sense, when things are affecting you, when you start writing about it and you start getting emotional, use those self-regulation skills that we've been talking about, right? And so and then 4 is to analyze the journal to identify the problems, because when you can start bringing in problems and identifying where the problem is, then we can actually find guided and directed solutions. And here is a great platform for us to do that, right? We're here for each other. We're going to help problem solve with each other. And that is, in and of itself, an executive function exercise. Right? And 5, schedule 10 to 20 minutes to answer the association with brain injury symptoms questionnaire. So now that I will be closing it, and then over the next week, please expect the scores to be sent to you. And then next week, we'll talk about it more in depth and what the scores mean and the categories and what the questions were evaluating. Right. So then 6 is hopefully all of you guys were able to practice at least one of the metacognitive strategies throughout the week. I think we initially talked about 9, and so just to practice one of those, right? And a couple of them off the bat is self-monitoring, all right? How successful I was in this, or how successful was that interaction? Self-regulation, can I notice when I'm getting dysregulated? Can I notice when I'm getting annoyed or frustrated? And what are the things that I can do about it, right? And so that's all setting up for the executive functions of emotion regulation, and then we'll spend a whole 2 modules in that after next week. So perfect. So at this point, any anyone have any particular challenges over these homework assignments over this last week, or maybe even not any problems but anything they noticed that they would like to share? Oh yes, Pam, I see a hand there. Yes, Pam.
Yes, I wanted to say um, how much calmer I can be when I follow these suggestions, and how much more aware, how much more able I am to notice my reactions to things and just observe what's going on for me rather than always being in a state of reactivity. So, but this is the first time in many, many years that I don't know that I've ever done that. I don't know that I've ever made that a practice in my life. So I really appreciate these. And I'm really proud of myself for being willing and able to implement them. Like I've tried for a long time to implement them, and I think I was in such a state of reactivity, I couldn't. So thank you very much.
Yeah, that's perfect, right? And I'm giving you a round of applause right now. That's round of applause, man. That's perfect, right? So I mean, that's really what the whole purpose of it is, to increase awareness, and by doing so, in an effort to reduce reactivity, right? Because then if we're always reactive, then it makes it really difficult to keep regulated. So I can appreciate that, and congratulations on your success. You should be very proud.
Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. And so, speaking of feeling proud, right? I'm going to embarrass my father real quick here, Willie Ignacio. He is on his journey of weight loss. And so, just to kind of bring in how journals and tracking are used in all kinds of different disciplines, right? He's trying to lose weight. And so, telling him to, use a journal. So, using kind of putting him through a lot of our initial things here for the cognitive workshop. So he got a composition book, and he's tracking what he eats, right? So someone in the afternoon session calls this the food uniform, right? So he tracks what he eats. He figures out the days, and he's tracking his blood pressure and everything. And in his journal, he's not only identifying how confident he is in being able to, and so that's a self-monitoring. So he's self-monitoring his own confidence in being able to track his food and regulate his food. And so in that, he's able to then identify a value that underlies his goals, right? His core value here is family. He wants to spend more time with us, right? That's great, because we want to spend more time with him also. And so his goals here for retirement, because now he's going to be moving slower and have an achy body, so he needs to adopt a healthier habit builder, so that way when he goes into retirement, he can have a more focused and healthier lifestyle once the activity significantly reduces, right? And so he's now been in retirement for 11 months, and he's doing great, right? And so that the keeping it accountable, right? Keeping it accountable and knowing his goals, right? That's underlying his weekly goals, so that way he can keep all those things in mind, right? And so goal setting is an
Okay.
effective way
I know
to
I'm speeding.
oh yeah. And so excuse me, Mike, I'm just gonna mute you there. And then also for uh Vanessa and Caitlin, I'm going to make y'all co-hosts. So for sure, if you can monitor the sounds and everything. So perfect. Thank you. So goal setting is very effective, as we've kind of been talking about last week. So goals for change are most helpful when they are smart, right? So they're specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, and realistic, and then relevant and time bound, right? So last week, right, you either shared a goal or you had a goal in mind, right? People were giving the head nods, right? So whatever your goal is, if you don't have a goal yet at this point, a great place to start is in one of the 5 brain health pillars, right? Physical activity or exercise. Pillar 2 is diet or nutrition. Pillar 3 is sleep. That's initiation or maintenance. 4 is stimulation, cognitive stimulation, right? Miss Katie was sharing things about, doing games, doing, hobbies, right? All of those are great. Reading, those are great. And then 5 is social connectedness, right? I think there was a goal that was shared last week, is that wanting to make more friends, right? Make more relevant friends, right? And in retirement and in moving and having a new life situation, right? Either through moving or retirement. A part of staying healthy and brain healthy is replacing those those old coworkers, what have you, with new playmates, for example, right? New friends, right? And part of all that is cognitively stimulating, right? So part of this is to take steps towards activating your brain, making sure that those connections are guided and they're practiced, and the routine, consistency, right? Consistency, when consistency can happen, practice stays happening, motivation keeps up, right? And then once those happen, connectivity throughout the brain happens and continues to grow. And when that happens, that is neuroplasticity at work, right? So when we're thinking about our goals, an important way to think about another important way to think about them is what gets in the way of your goal, right? Because then once we can start thinking of what gets in the way, we can start thinking of solutions that are meaningful and are practical and can be applied, right? And so what gets in the way of your goal, right? This is always a frustrating question for me, because most of the time, like, I don't know. I just know that I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and it's aggravating, right? And so this could be from fatigue or emotions or pain. If you're in pain, this could be physical pain, emotional pain, right? This could be sensations or distractions like headaches, migraines, numbness, right? And all this is, it is building up more stress and all of this, right? So really, when we want to think about what gets in the way, we really have to focus our the mind, because the mind in and of itself, whether or not we want it to be, the mind is a problem solving machine, right? That's just how it's been socialized, right? From when we're very young to when we're, older, right? The brain has been socialized to solve problems. That's what it does, right? So it's trying to solve problems in the past, many at a times for which we have no control over, leading to depression, right? It's like, oh, why did I do that? Or I should have done this, or I should have done that, or coulda, shoulda, woulda. But then, it's in the past. There's nothing, there's nothing, unless someone here had a time machine, there's absolutely nothing we can do about it, right? And then, or it's also trying to solve problems in the future for things that we also cannot do too much about, right? We can prepare, but in the far future, we're trying to solve problems that haven't come up yet, right? That's leading to anxiety. Or what about this? What about that? Oh man, what did it? And oh, what if this? And so the problem is the mind is solving both of these things, problems at the same time, in the past where it can do nothing, in the future where the problems haven't come yet. It's trying to solve both these things at the same time. And oh my God, it's causing so much stress that ultimately what we need to do is stop, keep calm, focus on the now, right? And also understand that there's an app for that, right? There's an app for that. And so part of that is keeping calm, right? So that way we can really understand where the problem is coming from, right? If you've ever had, in the middle of the night, it's like you're about to go to sleep. It's like 12 a.m. or it's like 2 a.m. And then suddenly you remember the thing that you forgot earlier that morning, right? And if that happens, chances are this like stress might be wreaking more havoc than you think, right? It's when things are quiet, right? It's when things are quiet, when you're about ready to go to sleep, there's no distractions. That's when you remember, right? So that may be something to consider, right? But ultimately, think about, well, where is your difficulty? Where's your cognitive difficulty, right? So the processes that we've reviewed thus far, and then this is, remember, if we remember on our path for our flow of cognitive processes model, executive functions are here at the bottom. So so far we've talked about memory, processing, attention, and alertness. And so alertness, if we can recall, if we have problems here, alertness can come from sleep, wakefulness. Well, another thing we've talked about is spoons, right? How many spoons did you have, right? So we pulled that from pulled that from another chronic condition. But these spoons are essentially energy points. How much energy points do you have in the morning, and how many energy points does each one of your activities cost? Right, because then you definitely want to have more points than you use, right? So how can we ensure that we can monitor those things? Otherwise, we'll get fatigue or neuro fatigue, and that could also come from like medications and things, right? It can also come from if you have poor vision or hearing. Right, I see some glasses in the room, right? So I mean, have you ever spent a day without your glasses, right? Where you're squinting the whole day. It's tiring, right? You squint for an hour, 2 hours, it's tiring, right? And so those things are what they call just low hanging fruit, where we can really pay attention. If we can't hear properly, can't see properly, it's gonna, our brains using up more mental gas to focus, right? And pay attention. And so, how do you stay alert? This could be staying awake. Are you sleeping adequately? Right? Are you falling asleep on time? Are you staying asleep? Or are you waking up a lot because you got to go to the bathroom, or you just wake up and uh, for no reason and started thinking about it, what I've started to realize, like I've been waking up pretty at least once a night, and so instead of sitting there, I've realized that like I should just get up and go to the bathroom, and that and sure enough, that's typically what it is. And so it's just something that I've monitored, and I was like, I should probably just go to the bathroom. And it's been one of those things where instead of laying in bed, I just go to the bathroom, and it works like gangbusters, and I'm asleep in like 20 seconds. Right. And so it's one of those things, right? And so the next thing is attention, right? How are we paying attention? And this can there are a whole bunch of different kinds of attention. I didn't even know there was more than one type, right? There's basic attention, sustained attention, selective attention, right? Are you able to pay attention to one thing versus another thing? And then divided. So let's say if you're cooking, while you're cleaning, while you're having a conversation, while you're doing this, right? Or shifting, set shifting, right? You're driving while you're having a conversation, while you're opening up a candy bar or a granola bar, while you're flipping through the radio and things like that. What you're doing is you're shifting from from driving. And so part of that is, that's part of why, at least in California, you're not supposed to be on your cell phone while you're driving, otherwise you'll get a ticket, right? At least a cell phone that you hold up to your head, at least, right? Or using a texting is another big thing that will definitely distract you. And so speaking of distracting, other things could be pain, right? Are you in pain? Right? I like this. This is a simple question enough, but sometimes the pain is so chronic that you just learn to mask it. Your brain just learns to forget it, not pay attention to it. When in reality, whether or not you paying attention to it, it's still distracting, right? Or medical conditions, right? So diabetes, thyroid, hypothyroidism, right? I was speaking to a PM&R guy. He's the lead PM&R guy for Kaiser, one of the Kaisers in Northern California. And he was telling me that, like, I was asking him about endocrinology and, hormone imbalances. And then he was like, yeah, that seems to be a lot for my patients, is for the ones where they're having persisting symptoms like depression or mood disturbances or even stress. Like I put in a referral to an endocrinologist, a neuroendocrinologist, and sure enough, I find that there's two things that come up most frequently, right? Hormone imbalances in the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which we talked about in week 3. On stress, chronic stress, HPA axis is the thing that controls your stress, right? It ultimately releases hormones that releases then glucocorticoids, which for humans is cortisol, right? But then the other one that he says that's usually the more higher yield is the pituitary, or not the pituitary, the thyroid, right? The thyroid. So, hormone imbalances after brain injury, he finds them in HPA axis, but mostly in the thyroid, hypothyroidism, right? Which can lead to mood disturbances and also then make it more problematic to handle stress, right? And what are some of the signs? Right? Fatigue, mood disturbances, hyperventilating. If you don't pay attention, when I'm stressed and I don't pay attention, I notice that my shoulders are always slightly shrugged. They're like slightly shrugged. I'm breathing lightly, right? So I'm breathing shallow. So I mean, these are things that are really important to pay attention to. And so part of paying attention, right? If you're looking for attention training, right, there are some very things that you can do, like journaling in pieces, right? So maybe journaling all at once, like at the end of the day. Maybe that's problematic because I can't remember what happens all throughout the day. So instead, I'll journal once in the like morning, afternoon, and night, so that way I can better pay attention and train my attention to only focus on certain things during parts of the day, so it's at smaller chunks instead of 24 hours. Other things could be meditation. And so the incog 2.0 guidelines don't necessarily uh, uh, support too strong for the meditation pieces, but it's part of the consistency, right? If you're consistent with controlling your attention, having your mind only pay attention to your breathing, right? If with guided and directed practice, right, your attention can be rewired. And then, of course, there are stimulants, which if you the INCOG 2.0 guidelines have recommendations for moderate to severe and even moderate to severe traumatic brain injury for methylphenidate, or for stimulants, and particularly if there's mild to moderate attention deficits. And so if that is a pathway for you, or you're open to consider that, please consult with your primary care physician. So how else do you pay attention, right? So other strategies that have been helpful are the acronym LEAP, right? So LEAP is listen actively, right? P or E is eliminate distractions. So if the TV's on, the radio's on, right? Especially if you're having conversations during while you're preparing lunch or something like that, eliminate distractions. And so remember, pain can also be a distraction. So either pain, resolve it through either physical therapy or other kinds of therapy or medications to eliminate or reduce pain. Then A for LEAP is ask questions, right? Because when you ask questions, that communicates to the other person that you're listening actively, right? And you're also asking questions for your own clarification. And then P which is the P for LEAP, is paraphrase. Let me see if I got you correctly there. Did you say X, Y, and Z? Right? I heard you say A, B, and C, but what did you mean is X, Y, and Z? And then that also then communicates to the other person, like, oh yeah, that's exactly what I meant. And it also allows, if it's not what they meant, then they can clarify, so that way you're both on the same page. And also you can put the conversation into your own words, right, which then helps with encoding. Right. Then we also talked about reverse paraphrasing, right, which may be another tool that you might want to use. Let's say you talk about something, and then at the end of what you say, you're like, hey, I'm also trying something. I want to make sure that I'm communicating what I'm meaning to say. Can you tell me what you just heard me say? Right. And so that way, when you're talking to your loved ones, and you ask them, can you repeat back what you heard, what you heard me say? Then you can check, well, did I say what I meant to say? Right. So, or did what I mean to say, was it received in the way that I meant it to be? Right. So that way you can ensure that your loved one is on the same page as you before you both go your separate ways, and you assume that they got you, and you assume that they understood what you said, right? Because then sometimes when I do this, particularly with my wife, it's like some of the things that she repeats back to me, I'm like, I did, is that really what you thought I said? That's not what I meant at all. Well, good thing I checked, right? And so that way, you didn't go off and go to the store and get this other thing that I actually didn't need, right? And then that avoids a whole argument later on, right? Other things that could help you pay attention, right, are nootropics, or supplements. Now, while these nootropics are like dietary supplements, and so dietary supplements, while they're FDA approved, when it says FDA approved, it just means that that it's safe to take, and that there is, in the whole bottle, there is the like what is indeed the active ingredient is indeed in the supplements and nootropics that you're taking. So just because it's FDA approved doesn't necessarily mean it's effective for what it's supposed to do, right? Or that, you know, per pill you're getting exactly as much as it is. So FDA approved says that the ingredient that is supposed to be in there is in there, and that it's safe, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's effective for what it's saying. So just to kind of put that out there, like FDA approved for dietary supplements, that it can be a little bit misleading, but you know, if it helps you, it's one of those things where you try it, see if it helps. If you're open to trying it, and you know, if you're open to trying something new, consult with your primary care physician. And if it's something that you're open to doing, meaning that you're open to also covering the cost for these dietary supplements, then you know, that's something for you to try and see if it works for you. And the same with medications, and ultimately self-care, right? Self-care is going to improve your attention and your cognition, right? Self-care, this is your 5 brain health pillars. You engage in physical activity, exercise, diet, nutrition, sleep, cognitive stimulation, and connecting socially, and those things are self-care. Those will improve your cognitive abilities. And so processing, this is, of course, the thing we're talking about. Encoding, this is putting in your own words. Storage, which is repeating or rehearsal, so that way you can organize them and retrieve them when you need them. And of course, here it is again. Encoding means putting in your own words. So if you paraphrase, then you're putting in your own words, which helps you with your storage because you're also repeating it, you're rehearsing it, that information. And then when you rehearse it, repeat it, it's organized. And then so that way your brain can organize them and tag them in multiple different ways in different areas in your brain. So that way your memories can enhance, right? So that way it's something that you're generally practicing the information, you're tagging it multiple ways. What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What does it sound like? What do I see? What is this used for? What can I connect it to? Things that I already know. So that way the more tags, quote unquote, the more tags that you can organize a memory with, the higher the likelihood that you will retrieve it when you need it. And so that is then memory, right? When you retrieve it, it's in your memory. And some of the strategies that we're talking about, your calendars, your journals, your different strategies, the more that you can tag them, the higher the likelihood that you will remember them, right? So here, what helps you remember? So there are some reminders, alarms, strategies, right? Calling or texting a friend, or calling or texting yourself, right? I mean, there's so many times I text myself during the day, or I'll call myself while I'm in the car because you know, if I remember something in the car but I can't text because my divided attention is dangerous while I'm driving, I will call myself and leave myself a message. Leave a message. Hi, Daniel. This is Daniel. I just wanted to leave a message. Remember to pick up the thing once, you know, later this afternoon, and and remember to call this person so that way you can tell them X, Y, and Z. All right. Thank you. Have a fantastic day. You are amazing. And I give myself self affirmations and like, bye bye. And so I leave myself a message. Right. And then so I'll retrieve it later on. Yes, Pam, you had something there. You had a question.
Yes. Well, I actually wanted to comment on what you just said with this. Well, I'm sorry. With the memories and the tagging the memories, I've found that I've tagged memories with negative emotions or negative thoughts, and it made me kind of a negative person. And then I had to fight against myself to not be negative or depressed, you know. So I've kind of been aware of that. And then I've revisited memories or thoughts or judgments and assumptions and kind of untangled the things
Yes.
that I've attached to them. So
Yes.
that's been really useful. So so thank you for teaching about that too. And
Yes.
and then the how that relates to what you just said, about you're a fantastic person, and that kind of my self talk has been, I've tagged, how I feel about myself. So I like hearing your message to yourself. I'll do the same. Thank
Yes,
you.
perfect, man. I love that, Pam. That's exactly right. And we'll get to something that kind of ties into something we're gonna share in a couple of slides called negative plasticity,
Oh,
right? And
okay.
so that's exactly right, and I love that, and I love the disentangling, right? So, because then when you can disentangle that negativity and instead replace it with the positivity and looking at the successes, then with guided and directed practice, eventually those pathways get rewired, right? So it's not a negative automatic thing, right? And it becomes okay, well, all right, well, what can I do differently? What can I learn from this? Right. And ultimately putting more solutions and strategies from what we're talking about to ultimately enhance your recovery as you move forward. I love that, Pam.
Thank you. Could
Yeah.
you, I was wondering if you could put that slide up about encoding, storage, and retrieval. Could you put that up just briefly again? I'm copying it.
Yeah. This one.
Repeat, rehearse, okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, Kat. Yeah. You had something there, Kat?
Um, well said, Pam. Well said on, reframing. And one of the things I've been working on when I remember is realizing how many negative things have lived rent free in my brain for years.
Preach.
And one of them was a bad experience with a dentist like 35 years ago. And it took like working with a hypnotist to realize that that has affected my needing to be under sedation at dentists for like 35 years because of one thing that happened. And when I realized that that negative thing, that negative memory has lived rent free in my brain all those years, and this dentist wouldn't remember me from diddly, right? Um,
Yeah.
and it's affected and cost me thousands of dollars, and needing sedation when most people don't. Um,
Yeah.
and this was just a couple months ago. Was really a kind of powerful thing that hit home,
Yeah.
that those negative memories aren't, I mean, they can be massively damaging,
Mm-hmm.
and to either try to jettison them. I've, been still working on evicting that memory. It doesn't serve me anymore. It's done its damage. I'm trying to get over it. But moving that into so many negative areas of my life, and just the going down that rabbit hole of negativity, especially at night, it gets very, very dangerous, slippery slope. um
Yeah.
so trying to reframe things, and if it's not productive, trying, or not trying, but doing my best to kick it to the curb.
Evicted.
Yeah, kick it to the curb. So, but Pam, well said on that untangling, and it's very, very true. So that was it.
Yeah. No, and I love that. I love that, Kat, right? I need to evict, right? You need to go, right? And so that ties in here well, right? Where is your difficulty, right? And as we talked about, memories can be very painful, right? And last week we talked about how phantom limb pain, right? Just the memory of a limb that is no longer there, right? Is for amputees is one example of how memories can translate to very real physical pain. And so with those kind of things, like where's your difficulty, right? Where's your cognitive ability breaking down, right? And if you're not sure, I mean, Kat and Pam, excellent work, right? You identified that, like, it's these thoughts, it's these negative, as they call it, ants. They call them ants, automatic negative thoughts, right? It's when all these ants, what are all these ants doing here, right? And so if you're unsure where your ants are or what your problem is, this is a fantastic opportunity for a journal, right? This is what the journal's for, right? Using the brain dump, right? When your mind is full of thoughts that are fluttering, it's the journal that you use, right? Is what can highlight some of those difficulties, right? And so over time, maybe one day or 1 week might not be enough, but once you get 2 weeks or 3 weeks of entries, you start noticing that there are themes in what I write. And so generally, people talk in themes, right? That I mean, that's a big reason for like unconscious or like hypnosis, those kinds of things, is understanding what is underlying in your themes of how you talk to yourself, right? Because then if you can then talk to yourself in, well, all I think about are my successes, then you'll start realizing that your problem solving will become much more efficient, right? Then what's here? What are my successes? And then instead of what are my failures or what I did poorly, what are my learning opportunities? What can I learn from this? I always forget this, right? So then what does that tell me about something I should be doing instead? All right, well, maybe it's because I'm doing too many things. Maybe I need to reduce my distractions. Maybe I'm talking to myself poorly. Maybe there's ants everywhere, right? Maybe I'm in pain. Now that I think about it, my left leg is in pain all the time. Um, and so all of these things ultimately will uh, go into securing executive function here at the bottom, right? And so when we can remove some of those things, those distractions, we can start thinking about ways to enhance and improve our initiation, our impulsivity control, like our planning, organization, our self-awareness, mental flexibility, goal-directed motivation, problem solving. And if you can think about these executive functions that I have listed here, a lot of these are aligned with the metacognitive strategies, right, that we listed previously, right? So if you're having difficulties with those metacognitive strategies, maybe that's a slight hint that there's something distracting or reducing the efficiency of your executive functions, right? um, other things, right? These are executive functions are your attention, inhibitory control, planning, emotion regulation, initiation, right? Getting started on things. Sometimes, right? It's not because I'm lazy or I'm procrastinating. I just don't know where to start. Right. And then because I don't know where to start, I just basically get myself into mental MMA, and then 3-4 hours go by, right? And self-monitoring, right? Working memory, right? We've talked about it. That's a rehearsal that changes from our short-term memory to our long-term memory. And organization, right? And organization means those mental tags, right? Can we put filing cabinets back into place so that way we can retrieve the information that we need when we need it? And then there's flexibility, cognitive flexibility, right? And this is the ability to adapt and generalize old information into new tasks, right? And that's how we improve our efficiency, right? It's like not everything that we encounter in the world is a completely new thing. Are there things that we've learned in the past that we can generalize into this new task? So that way your brain doesn't have to burn up all this mental gas to learn a completely new thing, right? Are there tasks that I've done in the past that this is similar to, right? And central to that cognitive flexibility are resilience. I think Pam and Kat were talking about earlier. And resilience is the basically the capacity to get up when you get knocked down. Grit is basically the capacity for you to keep going even though you keep getting knocked down, right? So you keep getting knocked down, you keep pushing through
Like
it,
keep
right?
on keeping on.
Yeah, there you go, Kyle. I love that. Keep on keeping on, right? And then that's yeah. And Kyle, you are a shining example of that, right? Keep on keeping
Yes,
on,
it's
brother.
definitely true.
Yes, that's right. Right. And then the third is growth mindset, right? Which is what we were just talking about. What can I learn from this? Right. And then what can I learn from this? When you have grit, resilience, growth mindset, those are key into cognitive flexibility. Right. And then cognitive flexibility is hands down key for problem solving, right? And I love this example or this definition. It's the brain's ability to navigate through problem space, right? And I love that, right? And because then when you gotta think through think of a problem like an obstacle course, right? If you ever gone through an obstacle course where there's you got to jump up and down, you got to lean over, you got to roll on your back, and all these things, you got to get on the monkey bars, right? That's basically what problem solving is when your brain, right? There's a problem, there's an obstacle course, so your brain, your cognition has to navigate through problem space, right? And so then you really got to think about, well, am I doing the same thing expecting different results? Right. And I think that's insanity for some in some definitions, right? And so sometimes solving a problem that's keeping you stumped, sometimes that's like going into new situations, meeting new people, right? Getting new ideas, right? Sometimes that could be a problem solving thing, right? Meeting new people. Not only will that help you with your problem solving, that'll also help you with your social connectedness. So now you're stacking strategies on top of each other. Do you have some there, Kyle? Oh no, okay. I thought you raised your hand, right? Because then
Yeah, no, I was
going
just
into
mentioning, that's all.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So going into new situations, thinking about things differently, like Pam and Kat were talking about it, thinking about things differently, right? This is that it combats this, what they call negative neuroplasticity, right? As we were talking about, neuroplasticity can be a bad thing, right? This can also be called maladaptive plasticity, right? So negative plasticity, maladaptive plasticity in chronic TBI, right? And the implications for neurorehabilitation. And I just want to highlight something that they have listed here. TBI as a chronic condition, right, that lasts months or years, right, as a disease process, especially when there's quote unquote environmental impoverishment and cognitive disuse, right? So this is kind of what we're the questions that you guys answered that I'll get you feedback on this week. This is fear avoidance, cognophobia. I am fearing using my cognition because it makes my symptoms worse, right? And when you fear making your symptoms worse through use of your cognition, then you avoid that cognitive effort, right? And when you avoid cognitive effort, that's cognitive disuse. And when you have cognitive disuse, you get into deconditioning processes, right? So think of when you break your arm, they put in a cast, and the whole thing is after you get the cast off, you got to use that arm. Otherwise, your muscles are going to atrophy. So similarly, if you stop using your brain, right, you stop engaging out of fear of symptom exacerbation, then your brain is going to go through that same process. It's called deconditioning. And so not only when you're thinking of things, when you stop using and stop cogniphobia or fear of use of cognition, is then now withdrawing. You withdraw from situations. You withdraw because you're anxious about, like, oh, I'm gonna forget, so I'm not gonna be around other people, or I'm gonna forget, I'm gonna fail, so I'm not gonna go into this class because so I'm not gonna engage in this volunteer, or I'm not gonna engage in work because I'm gonna do poorly. Then not only is it cognitive disuse, but then you're also removing yourself from enriching and engaging environments, right? So that the environment gets impoverished, and then then you're having some real problems, right? Other situations is, even in the spinal cord literature, the dark side of neuroplasticity, right? In the spinal cord injury literature, this is over 10 years ago, the same structural neuroplasticity that happens with gains, right? That's typically how we think of neuroplasticity, as a positive thing. It can also produce negative consequences such as pain and dysfunction of organs controlled by the ANS, or the autonomic nervous system. So these are things like heart rate variability, response to stress, respiration, heart rate, right? Pulse, those kinds of different things, pupillary response, right? All of these different things, all of those autonomic functions, like neuroplasticity, can also be associated with these negative consequences if we're not careful. So being aware is the first step, right? And so when problem solving, one of the steps, right, to talk about the first step is not only awareness, but then to use this problem solving method, right? This is from CogSmart, right? And so, Kat, I hope you're able to get into CogSmart, but I know this is one of the strategies that they use in CogSmart is called the D-BEST model. And so here in the slides, there is a download link there on the slides. And the first step is to define the problem, right? So what is the problem in the first place, right? What is it? And so slowing things down, right? I think Kat and Pam, you guys did a beautiful job where it's the negative. Oh my God, that's what it is. It's this negative memory, this negative thought. That's the problem, right? And then we start to brainstorm solutions around the problem, right? So it could be, thinking of myself in different ways, self affirmations, maybe using a different dentist, or brainstorming with the dentist, him or herself, right? Then we evaluate each solution, like, okay, did that work? This is self-monitoring. This is a metacognitive strategy. Evaluate. Then we select the solution to try. So you just pick one, right? Start at one. Just start at one and then move down, right? Then we got to try it, right? And then E is evaluate again, right? So evaluate the solution again, right? And so did it work? Do you need to try another one? Right? And if so, go back to 4 and keep trying them until you go down the list, right? And so if you can if you have a problem this week, take that problem, whatever it is, even if you don't know what it is, and apply the D-BEST model. There is here the slide here has a download link where you can get the worksheet, right? And that's available there for download. And so an important thing here, and so I'm gonna pause the recording here in just a moment so I can play this video. So as we've been talking about the fear avoidance, the cognophobia, the negative thoughts, the ants, right, and how that impacts moving forward and the behaviors that you're doing that are progressive and productive in for you to engage in your own recovery and engage in your own life. Right. One important thing there is this idea that was initially pioneered by Dr. Martin Seligman, called learned helplessness. And also, if you were able to take a look at the homework from last week in the email that Vanessa sent, there is Dr. Martin Seligman also pioneered the thing called learned optimism. So that is the analog to learned helplessness, which we'll learn about in just a moment. So I'm going to pause the recording here so I can play the video. Zoom recording. I'm resuming the recording here. And so exactly right. So the learned helplessness piece, right? Despite having now the power to change your experience, you stay trapped because of the past, right? Those painful memories, right? For example, and that's one way, like Kat was saying, that memories can really throw a wrench in everything. And so part of the video that was sent on Friday from Vanessa has a video that talks about learned optimism, and how eventually getting those dogs to escape the shocks. The research assistants had to physically move the dog off of the panel that shocked them, so that they could learn to engage, to re-engage their lives, right? And so that's kind of what we're doing here is, I'm like this workshop, giving you strategies. We're here to help support you, help support each other, to really help you re-engage the things in your life that you thought that were hopeless. And so part of the whole thing, learn optimism, is hope, right? And so part of that is, how did Dr. Seligman teach the dogs to learn helplessness to eventually escape? They had to encourage them, and sometimes that encouragement took physical encouragement, right? So hence the importance of a caregiver or a loved one or friends to move you in to a space where you can now feel empowered, right? Remember, we're talking about disorder happens when the systems that empower us, it's when those systems are compromised. And so if we can empower those systems to empower us, then we can improve the movement forward, the progression forward, right? And I see Rosie, right? So she was not able to get into a lab, right? And then eventually was able to encourage the systems to get her into a position at the university labs, so that she can learn the things that she thought weren't possible. And so the systems were empowered to then empower her. And now she's doing great, right? And so looking forward to seeing what she does in the future, right? So as Babe Ruth said, right? You just can't beat the person who never gives up, right? So in rehabilitation, maybe we should not be so concerned with the pursuit of happiness, but rather the happiness in our pursuits, right? So, and when we can focus on the happiness in our pursuits, that builds motivation, right? For the things that we used to think that were no longer possible, we can find ways to get there, right? Small steps, right? Small steps every day, right? That's 365 small steps a year, right? And who knows where we'll be in 10 years or 5 years or even just 2 years, right? And when they talk about which side the grass is greener on, well, it's greener on whatever side that you water. And so thus far, we've participated in these group principles: universality, you are not alone; group cohesion, right? We use each other as a platform to build sense of belonging and trust; and then altruism, right? Being the ability to be helpful to others, right? You bring in your strategies, bring in your resources. Please, like we said, any and all resources is greatly appreciated, right? And as Brene Brown said, our level of community connection can never be more than your level of self-acceptance, right? And so remember, we're thinking of that person environment fit, right? And so acceptance, and when we say acceptance, this doesn't mean acceptance like, oh, okay, I'm damaged goods and I have to accept that. No, that's not what we're saying. Acceptance is that acceptance in that you are doing your best to engage in your environment, right? And adapt and accommodate wherever needed, right? So recall that acceptance does come and go in waves, like, oh, maybe I can't do my best today because of pain or what have you. So overall acceptance as a goal can be overwhelming, right? It's too much, right? So what do we do when it's too much? Problem solve. We got to break it down, right? Maybe not accepting the whole situation, but not letting my symptoms, my pain, my disorder ruin my day, right? So maybe not 100%, but 70%. And so acceptance again, right? I am a survivor of brain injury and many other things, right? And so part of this, acceptance will maximize your cognitive benefits or lower your stress and anxiety. It'll help you begin the process of adapting and progressing, right? And so, as Michael J. Fox said, right, optimism, he has Parkinson's, right? Optimism and learned optimism is sustainable when you keep coming back to gratitude. And what follows from that is acceptance, that you're doing the best that you can to engage in whatever ways that you can. And another flexibility strategy here is to broaden your expectations, right? Maybe you didn't get exactly what you wanted, but what were some of the things that were successful, right? I think that's what we mean by broadening our expectations. It's not all or nothing. There are some things that are called successes. And so when it's all or nothing, either I failed or I didn't, that's called dichotomous thinking or black and white thinking. And so remember, right? And if you need some assistance on Fridays, I always ask who's got a success that they've had in the past week. And so here are some of the cognitive distortions that we're going to be reviewing. So here's our polarized thinking, catastrophizing, right? Oh, one negative thing in this small thing must be everything's going to be negative, right? Catastrophizing, right? Or overgeneralization, right? One negative thing must mean everything is bad, right? Or personalization. This is my fault because I'm this person, or I'm this, or I'm that, or they're this, or they're that, right? And so and then of course disqualifying the positive, right? Disregarding the positive aspects of what you did, because then ultimately we should also the cognitive distortion is should statements. I should be here already, I should be this already, I should be able to drive already, I should be. And then when these happen, that kind of goes down that pathway of what Pam and Kat were saying, those negative thoughts. Ants everywhere. There's ants everywhere. There's ants all over my body. There's ants all over the table. There's ants all over my food. It's terrible. There's ants everywhere, right? And that's just a terrible image to have, right? So it makes sense. And so again, the 5 brain health pillars are here: exercise, nutrition, sleep, stimulation, and connecting socially. So as we think about moving forward into next week, what does leaning into relationships look like for you now, right? You've got you've got this history of a brain injury, and you've got the symptoms that's left. Some symptoms might still be persisting, right? So what does leaning into relationships look like for you? This could be with your loved ones, your friends, your caregiver. And so maybe identifying one relationship to invest in a little bit of time this next week. And so as we kind of think about, well, when we put the brain into a brain scan, and fMRI in particular, we took a look at they told healthy controls, imagine the past, right? Imagine the past, right? Remember the past. Remembering the past, what is that? Like remembering past events, what does that look like? Okay, perfect. Now I want you to imagine the future. Imagine the future. It looks very similar, right? It looks very similar. So recall, when we talk about recalling our memories from last week, our brain and our very, very precious memories, and understanding that the past can mimic our future. And so when we can recall and reimagine the past, we can reimagine the future, right? And so thinking of that, when we can think of the past in a way that empowers us, then we can think of and reimagine the future in a way that empowers us as well. And so what strategies have you implemented in your life in the past month? Thank you. And so, perfect. Looking forward to keeping up with you guys next week. And so have a fantastic week. And I'll look forward to seeing you guys in the afternoon or on Friday. If not, I'll see you next Monday.
All right. Thank you. It was awesome.
Okay, Daniel, bye bye for now, though.
Ready?
Bye. Have a
Bye,
fantastic
everyone.
day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.